welcome to Mr. Otter Studio. Today I'm going to go over 10 oil painting supplies for beginners. Don't get intimidated by the amount of things that you see here, because I'm going to show you a bunch of different things, but in the end I want you to choose maybe the things that you will use more, especially where color is concerned and paintbrushes. So I'll just give you a little bit of an overview of each of these and you can kind of choose the ones that you want. So really quick, before I go into detail on each of these, I'm just going to quickly name them for you. So the first thing you need is oil paint. And the second thing you need is some kind of solvent, something to get it off of your brush, in a container preferably, or just a jar. You need linseed oil. So this basically makes it a little bit more fluid and it slows the drying time. And then you need, number 4, some paintbrushes. And I have a ton here. I'll show you the different tips and brands, whatever. Really, you just need 1 or 2 brushes to start with. So don't get intimidated by all of those. Number 6 is something to paint on, whether that's a canvas, a board, canvas paper. I have a tutorial for that. You can find it in the description below. Then I recommend an easel. I'll show you some of the different easels that I have in my studio. Actually, I mainly just use one, so I'm just gonna show you that one. And you need a palette. You use a plate, paper, a rag, something to dry your paints off on. And then number 10 is kind of optional, but I would say it's important, is to wear gloves when you're using oil paints. A lot of artists don't, but I recommend it just because some of these things have like poison in them, like cadmium. It's probably just better to protect your hands. All right, let's get into it. Let's talk about each one of these and I'll give you my recommendations and also some different price points. There's definitely more affordable options and more expensive options. All right, you can see there's these colors here, but you can also choose a ton of other colors. There are so many options you have when you're looking at oil paints. Really, all you need is black and white and a red, yellow, and a blue. And really, you can do so much painting just with those. You know, choose a red, a yellow, and a blue, and you'll be fine, right? There are hundreds and hundreds of, maybe not hundreds, but probably hundreds of colors that you can choose from. So I would kind of think of what you want to paint and then choose those ones, let's just zoom in here a little bit, that are going to help you paint that. I'm just gonna tell you really quick the name of these colors. These are the ones that I recommend, but again, there's like so many different options, so don't feel like it has to be these colors, because maybe you like a different red or a different blue. That's great. Use whatever color, honestly, you will use. Okay, so I'm just gonna tell you really quickly the colors that I recommend are titanium white, ivory black, cadmium red medium, cadmium red pure, or cadmium yellow, ultramarine blue, burnt umber, Prussian blue, French ultramarine blue, excuse me, Viridian, Sap Green Hue, and I'll talk about that in a second, yellow ochre, definitely recommend that, cadmium yellow, this is lemon, and this is pure, and this is cadmium red light pure, Alizarin Crimson, burnt sienna, raw sienna, and you know, I honestly like raw umber too. I don't think I have that here, but that's a really great color. There's so many just beautiful, beautiful colors. And I had a violet. I need to find it. So that's also a color I would recommend. I'll find it and I'll show you in a later video. Remember, you can mix almost anything with red, yellow, and blue. However, I showed you the Zorn palette and he basically uses black, red, and yellow. So that's his palette. And that's not even really, it's yellow ochre. So he just uses these 4 paints. So don't feel like you have to go out and buy a ton of different paints. Just to give you an example of the cost of these, you can buy like this cadmium yellow lemon. This was $25. This yellow ochre was $10. So there you go. There's just like a little comparison. Now, really quick, when talking about oil paints, if you are concerned about some of the chemicals that are in some of these, let's just focus here if I could. So this says cadmium yellow pure. And the reason it says that is because there is cadmium in this. Okay, cadmium is poison. It's poisonous. I don't know if it is poison, but it's definitely not great for you to have on your skin or to get in your mouth. So if you're the kind of person that's going to be putting your paintbrush in your mouth, like a weird habit you might have, don't get something like this. Don't get like cadmium pure or cadmium red pure light. This one's light. But you can see here, do not spray apply. This contains cadmium. Also, if you're pregnant, you want to be really careful. I probably just wouldn't even use these. Instead, you can get something that says hue on it. So Sap Green Hue is going to be those colors that maybe would have had cadmium or some other thing in it without it. Like there's no warning on the back of this, right? However, this one has a warning on it. So come on, focus, harmful. Okay, warning, exposure may cause harm to developing fetus, contains cadmium. So if you're worried about that, just grab something that says hue. And in the description below, I will include a link to all of these different colors. There's so many different brands. I like whatever I can find. I used to use Winsor & Newton. They're great paints. I've used them for a long time, but as you can see, they got a little bit old. And honestly, these are the only ones I could find at the art store by my house. So that's why I bought them. But I've liked using them the little that I've used them. And then also M. Graham makes a great oil paint and watercolors. I've heard a lot about them. So that's the brand. Again, you can also buy some that are not as expensive. So I feel like the Utrecht ones aren't bad, but you can find cheaper ones at like craft stores and even art supply stores. So in the beginning, just use what you can afford for sure. Don't feel like you have to go buy these expensive ones. These were crazy expensive. And you definitely do not want to start with all of these colors. Limit yourself in the beginning before it gets crazy, and figure out what colors you like. If there's a blue and it like isn't the right hue for you, then try some different ones, but don't feel like you have to try everything all at once. You need a solvent. So this is going to be what will clean the paint off of your brush. Put it in a jar. You can also buy one of these fancy jars that have like a coil in it for cleaning the paint off your brush, and then the paint kind of seeps to the bottom. These just last for a long time, and I don't know, I'm just used to using it, so I like it. But you could just use a glass jar, it's great. So this cleans the paint off your brush, but it also thins out your paints. So this is a great I feel like this is awesome to use as your first layers. Like my first sketch I usually do with some oil paint and some turpentine. The nice thing with this is it's odorless. You'd always want to be in a ventilated room when you're oil painting, but this doesn't smell as bad, so that's good. But it still is not good for you to eat, breathe in, or get on your skin. So there's that. Okay, number 3 is linseed oil. This is a small thing of linseed oil. This is an amazing thing to have for oil painting. So this slows the drying time. It also, like, turpentine will make your oil paints a little bit fluid, but it also dries it out. So linseed oil extends your drying time or slows it down, and it makes your oil paints more fluid. And this is a great thing to use on some of your later layers of paint. So I really like it. It's great for glazing paints over the top of one another. And really quick, this is not one of the 10, but I would definitely recommend this liquid. This actually speeds up drying time, but it doesn't thin out your paints like turpentine. So we used to call it like camel boogers or something. I know, that's gross, but yeah, that's it. Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty stuff. Let's talk about paintbrushes. You do not need all of these brushes. I just wanted to give you a good overview of the different shapes of the tips of the brushes, the lengths of the brushes, and what they're made out of, and maybe why you would want to use some compared to others. Okay, so paintbrushes are made out of different materials. So this would be made out of hog bristles. So this is like a natural thing, but it's super stiff, which is great for oil painting. You really need something that can move it around, and it comes in lots of different shapes and sizes. So then you can get some synthetic brushes. So this one is a synthetic brush. So it's just made out of like some kind of plastic probably, but it has the same consistency. Actually, it's a little bit thinner, a little bit nicer, finer texture than the hog bristle. And then you can also get some like real things from nature or like animals. So this is red sable fur on the end of this brush. And it's gonna be a little bit more expensive for something like this. But the nice thing about this is it's really soft. I can get really smooth edges. Also, the this is what I've heard people say. So we have our hog bristle, our synthetic, and then right here is going to be our red sable. The hog bristle, this one right here, this is going to be like the workhorse. Like I seriously just used this when I painted in oil in college. I didn't have any of these other brushes. I just used the hog bristle brushes, and I used really cheap ones. And then the second one, the synthetic ones, are great for hard edges, precision. You know, you can get a little bit more of a fluid looking line. So this is hog bristle, and then this is synthetic. Probably looks the exact same, but this is definitely softer. And then this is the softest, most flexible of them all, is the red sable. Let's talk about the different shapes of the brushes and why you might want to use them. So this is a flat brush. This brush is going to be good for covering large areas. This is seriously the workhorse, it really is. You can paint a lot of your painting with something like this. So that's the square. And also I would go by the size of the square. They have numbers, but they're all so different that I would actually just look at the measurements, like a 1/2 inch square, an inch square, 1/4 inch round, things like that, because the numbers seriously change in brands. And so it's pretty unreliable. So I just look at the measurements, the inches here. Or I just kind of go to the store and see, like, do I want a big, medium, or small? But if you're ordering online, look at the inches or the millimeters. It's going to give you a little bit more accurate size. Okay, so flat. This one is called a filbert. And this is really nice. You can get really nice edges with this. Softer edges. It just fits into areas a little bit better and doesn't have this hard edge right here. So the filbert can actually be used for the whole painting as well, which is nice. This one is round. That's pretty easy to explain. You can get into detailed areas, but you can also cover a lot. So that's an important shape to have. And then there is bright. Now, please in the comments, let me know if I've got this wrong, because I always thought that the filbert was actually bright. But what I've read is that the bright brushes are just shorter. Here, a bright brush just doesn't have as long of, I want to say fur. That's not it. Bristles. If you're just gonna get 2 brushes, you could try any of these. I would get something big like this that's like 1 inch, and then I would definitely get a smaller brush similar to like this size right here for your details. So you could even just choose one of these and then this, and you are set. Like you can get, especially this one, but I would definitely choose one of these for sure, and then a smaller one for details. Okay, now I'm gonna show you a few extra shapes and sizes. Just for your reference, if you're buying brushes, you can get this angular brush. This is great for filling areas in, and also just has a cool line quality when you're painting with it. It's almost like I don't know why, it reminds me of calligraphy, just how it's shaped. Then you have the Bob Ross. I don't know why fan brushes remind me of him. You can get some cool textures with this grass. It's just so soft and nice. And I'm pretty sure these are like synthetic sable. So these aren't actually sable, but synthetic sable. So if you're wondering about that. And then the last one, and honestly, this one I would recommend for sure, is it's called a multi-liner, or just a liner. I think it's a multi-liner. This is a great paintbrush because you can get really long brush strokes with this. Think branches, and if you like to outline things, it reminds me of Van Gogh's. He sometimes has those nice outlines, but probably wasn't using something like this, but you could. This holds a lot of paint and you can get a lot of details with it. So I'll try to put the words somewhere in here so that you're not just listening to me and getting a little dizzy with all of my moving around. All right, let's talk about brands really quick. So these brushes, I have not used this brand, but again, it's just whatever I could find at the supply store. This is Treacle, and I don't know, there have been some bristles falling out of these before I've even used them. So I'll give them a try before I doubt them. But I would definitely recommend Da Vinci brushes are amazing. And also, I've had really good luck with Princeton brushes. Some brushes are really long, some brushes are a little bit shorter. When you're trying to figure out what is going to work best for you, something that's shorter like this is going to be for those people that are doing like a realistic painting and you want those details. And so you might be a little bit closer to your canvas or your board, And this works great for that because I mean, it's good to hold it near the end, but if you're really close, holding it like this all the way back, like it doesn't even fit on the camera, it would be really hard to get those details in, even if you're using a small brush. So if you're gonna be doing a ton of detail close up, then you need probably a few of these smaller brushes that you can get a little bit closer with. Something to paint on, whether that's a canvas, a board, canvas paper. I have a tutorial for that. You can find it in the description below. So this is a video of my easel. It's back there. It's super tall. I'll turn it around so you can kind of see the different parts of it. But I really like it because my space is not tiny, but it's not huge. I like how I can roll it around and how I can fit huge canvases on it or really small ones. It's super easy to maneuver, and I got it at an antique store. These are palette knives. Sorry about the reflection right there. It's a little creepy to see that. But I love to paint with these. But the number one thing people usually get them for, and why it's recommended, is you want to mix up your paints with these on your palette. If any of you have tried mixing it with your paintbrush, you'll notice that your paintbrush soaks up a ton of the paint, and then you have nothing left to paint with, right? And so that's why this is really handy, especially when you're using those more expensive, little bit oil paints. So think about different sizes. I love the texture with these two. That's why I chose these. And something I'm gonna throw in there, this is not a palette knife, but Princeton makes these, and honestly, this is they're called these catalyst brushes, and I used to be able to find them. They've been a little bit harder for me to find lately. I haven't been going to a lot of stores, but where I have gone, I haven't found them. I love painting with these. It is my favorite, and I cut this one to get a smaller end, but these are really great for doing painting techniques, really just globbing the paint on there. It's just amazing. So if you want something like this, these are more flexible. It's like a spatula. You might have something like this in your kitchen, so you know, experiment, try it out. You can tell these are well loved and well used. The next thing you need is some kind of palette. You can use a board, you can use a glass palette. A lot of people love those, but I just use these disposable ones just because I don't have a lot of time, and so this is my palette, and when I'm done, I just roll it up and then I throw it in the garbage. And I am going to do a little research that seems like it's not very great for the environment. But I do know that a lot of these things I'm putting back into Earth, actually, they came from it. So that's the weird conundrum, if that even is the word to describe this. You can also use a plate. Honestly, this is what I use mostly. I've got to be honest. I use these a lot, but kitchen plates are nice. You just have to clean them off. Try not to use them again. You can also buy these little cups to attach to your palettes, whether they're glass or whatever, and they're great for mixing color. These will clip onto a canvas, or not a canvas, but a palette really well, but they also clip onto my plate, totally by chance that happened. And you can also find these palettes that have a little hole, these paper palettes, so you can hold it while you're painting. But I don't know what I do. I just keep it on something hard and then just use it to paint with. So you definitely need something to mix those oil paints on. I would recommend using what you can afford and what's gonna work for you. A lot of people love wood palettes, and those are great. I mean, they're classic. Bob Ross uses it, so you probably should too. The last thing you need is a rag, something to clean your paintbrushes off with. Also, sometimes just wipe your hands on. A rag is wonderful for this, and I do just throw these in my washer machine sometimes, or I just throw them away. So you can just use whatever method works for you. I've heard a lot of people just use newspaper, and I am one of those weird people that still gets it, so. And the last thing you need, and this is totally optional. The other ones I would say you probably need all of them, but this one is going to be some rubber gloves, and this is just to protect your hands. I mean, a lot of these paints, like we talked about before, are harmful, especially cadmium. Let's see, and that's also the cost. That's why the cost, I feel like, is so expensive. So if you see any warnings on there, that means just be careful using that. That means it has probably cadmium in it. Use gloves. It'll just make it a lot easier for you to clean up, a lot easier for you to not get dangerous chemicals on your skin if you're worried about that. If you want to live a little bit longer, you know, these chemicals are not, they're serious. That's why you have to work in a ventilated room. And that's why I've been working with acrylics for so long. That's it. I hope that wasn't overwhelming for you. But in the end, seriously, just use what you can afford with those brushes. I would just recommend a larger brush and a smaller brush to start out with, almost like I recommend for watercolors. Thank you so much for watching this. I hope it was helpful for you and it helped you choose some of those art supplies that you want to use and maybe some that aren't really going to be helpful for you. With colors, just again, think about what you want to paint. I'll be doing videos that go in a little bit more detail about each of these things, especially paint color and paint brushes. So you can look for those in the future. Next week, we are going to be doing it's like a black and white value study of some geometric shapes. And I will have the image of these shapes on my website, MrOtterStudio.com. You can go there and get that, and you can also find out what I recommend. You just basically need black and white. Black and white oil paint and some solvent for sure. And then maybe a large and small brush, whatever size and whatever shape you would like. So thank you so much for joining me today on Mr. Otter Studio. I hope this was helpful and that you feel ready for this next adventure in oil painting. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next week.